Hello, welcome to the first segment of our video lecture for this week, where hopefully we'll get a little bit familiar with using Visio to do our ER diagrams. Remember, you can get Visio at DreamSpark for free. You should know how to log in there. That's probably where you got access, and Visio should be there as well. Once you've opened Visio, you have all these choices, and the one that we're going to choose for our ER diagram are the ones that say crow's foot database notation. On mine, when I open it up, it's right here, but when I open it up again, it may be in a different spot. Yours may not start right there, so if it's not there, you can scroll down and find it. Okay? But we'll click on crow's foot, and we'll say create. All right. And we get our drawing area, all of our tabs and commands and some crow's foot notation symbols here that we can use. The first thing that I want to do, because it's just easier for me, and most people find it easier, I'm going to click on the Design tab, and I'm going to go to Orientation and put my drawing area in Landscape. Let me move it over so it fits in the window. If this recording video, I have a much smaller window than I would like to use, but we'll make it work here. Alright, so now it's a landscape, and it's a little easier since most of our ERDs tend to go wider than they are tall. Okay. Alright, now over here you can see that we have entity, primary key attribute, primary key separator, attribute, and relationship. These are the main symbols that we're going to use. Actually, the main ones we're going to use will be entity, attribute, and relationship from here. Okay? If we want to draw an entity relationship diagram, obviously we need some entities. To get these symbols from here onto our drawing canvas, we just drag them over. So I'm going to drag myself a couple of entities here. There's one. And there's another one. Okay, and I can move them around the way I want to. Okay. If I wanted to, I could change the way that they look up here. That's what these up here, you can make them look like whatever theme that you want. Okay. Now, once I have these entities, I need to give them some names. To be able to type in these boxes, I'm just going to double click right there where it says entity name, and then I'm going to be able to type, put some pretty generic names on there. Entity 1, and I click outside, and it comes back the way that we saw it before. Okay. Again, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll double click where it says entity name. The name is entity 2, and I click outside, and it goes back to its normal look. Okay. In the same way, I'm going to name all of the attributes. We come up with 3 attributes to start. Okay. I'm going to double click E1 ATTR1. E1 ATTR2, E1 ATTR3. Over here, E1 ATTR1, E2 ATTR2. Oops, misnamed that one, sorry. There we go. 2 ATTR1. Now, let's say at this point, I don't need this third attribute here. All I have to do is select it by single clicking, and I can simply press my delete key, and it goes away. Later on, if I come back and see that I need it, I can go over here and drag my attribute from here and just attach it there, and now I have a third attribute. Okay, we've created a couple of entities. In our next segment, we will look at relationships. Thank you. Hello, welcome to our second segment of our video lecture for this week. As I mentioned in the end of the first segment, we'll be talking about relationships in this segment, but before we begin that, I do need to show you how to create a primary key and set an attribute as a primary key if it's not the default. As we remember in the first segment, when we choose our entities, the very first attribute is the default primary key, the little PK box here. However, sometimes there is the need for a composite primary key. Okay. When we do this, how do we set an attribute as a primary key? Well, Visio gives us a very, very simple way to do that. Let's say over here on Entity 2 that we want our primary key to be not just the first attribute, but the first and the second attribute. Okay. Well, I'm going to select my second attribute. Then I'm going to right click. And when I right click, I get a menu. And one of the options on it, and this may be out of your view all the way, but it says Set Primary Key. Let me try to, I'm going to show it to you here over on this one. Let me see. There, now you can see. Set Primary Key. So when I click that, bam. As you can see, I'm going to click outside, we have the little PK box come up right there. Alright, now we have a composite primary key set, but our primary key separator is still up here. Very easy to move this. All we do is we click it and drag it down below the second part of the primary key and click outside the box. Now we have two attributes in our primary key. We just made a composite primary key. Okay, very simple. Click on it, right click, choose set the primary key. Okay, now let's move on to relationships. The first thing we want to talk about is how to get the relationship connector in there. Okay, this is done quite simply, just like the entities are done. You just click on it and drag it over into your drawing area and drop it down. Okay. Now we have our relationship line indicator here. Okay. All right. Looking at the ends of this, the first thing I like to do, these ends are so small, they are very difficult to read. Okay. So I like to make my ends bigger so that I can see them much more clearly. And when you do Visio drawings for me, please increase the size of these ends so that they're clearer to see. All right. So the way we increase this is we click on this relationship indicator, we select it, and then we right click on it, and we choose the Format Shape option. Okay, all right, we got that Format Shape, and my Format Shape, well, this normally it will come up like this, and also normally this Format Shape box will come up way on the far right side of your screen. I've moved it over into the recording area for this video. This video has a limited recording area, so I've moved it over here for recording purposes, but typically it comes up on the far right side of the screen, and really when I'm working with it, that's where I like to leave it. Again, I moved it just for recording this video purposes. Okay. Now we want to choose the line, okay, section, and we're going to go down to the begin arrow size. Okay. All right, that size is medium. All right, I'm going to choose extra large and see what that gives me. And to me, that's still just a bit small. Okay, so I want to format that shape again. Sometimes it's contrary, and the quickest way for me to do it is to go back and select it again. All right, and now I want to make that jumbo. Okay, now I can see that much better. And the end size, I'm going to make jumbo as well, which we can see much better. All right, now we have our shapes the size we want them. We'll continue showing how to create these relationships in the third and final segment of the video. Thank you so much for your attention. Hello. Welcome to our third segment of this week's video lecture. We're going to continue looking at creating relationships on our entity relationship diagram. Hopefully after this segment is finished, you'll have a good idea of how to use Visio to create your entity relationship diagram for this course. Now remember, in our last segment, we got our relationship line out here. We got our ends big enough to see what type of cardinality we had. Right now we want to attach these ends to our entities. Okay, so we select our line, and in the little rectangle here on the end, we're going to grab it, and we're going to move. As you can see, it moves. It can attach to this one. We're going to attach it over here. Okay, we're going to attach this end to entity 1. All right. When it comes up glue connection point, you know that it's stuck onto the entity. All right, and will stay there. Okay, so we can let go, and now that end is on entity 1. Okay. To move the other end to entity 2, we do the same thing. Grab the end, move it over here, and depending on where we put it, you can see little things turn green. That's where it's going to be glued to. Okay, pick your attributes. Okay, or even when it turns green, the whole thing is glued to the whole entity. Okay. Sometimes you might want to indicate exactly that we're just doing it to an entity or just to an attribute. Okay. We're just simply going to glue it on right there wherever it sticks at this point, though. For our purposes, that is fine. Okay. Now we have our relationship lines drawn, and we can see that we have 0 to many here, and 1 and only 1 here. Okay, or 0 or more. There's many terms you can use for this. Okay. Also, now that they're glued, if we move our entities around, our lines move with it. Okay, we're still glued. Okay, and the lines simply move with it. Okay, all right. One thing you could consider doing when you're making this, if you glue this endpoint to the entity where the entire box comes up, when you move, it moves in a little bit nicer fashion. You might consider gluing it that way, just simply because it moves in a little nicer fashion for the drawing. Okay, and sometimes you do have to rearrange your boxes, your entity table boxes. Okay. All right, now, what if we did not want this end to be 0 or many? What if we realized that it has to be 1, that it's 1 to many? Okay, we can change that shape. Again, we simply select the line, and we right click, and we go back to our format shape area. Okay, in this format shape area, we come down here, and we see begin arrow type. Okay, we're going to click begin arrow type, and it's a little out of your viewing area. I pull it up. There you go. Now you can see it. As you can see, what's selected is the type that we currently have. But let's say we want it to be 1 to many instead of 0 to many. So we're going to select this type. Number 28, as you can see, says 1, shows the 1 to many notation. We select that, come out here and look, and as you can see, our endpoint notation has been changed 1 to many. You can see, connecting to the entity. The same thing for the other side. Select it and right click, format shape. We'll go down to our end arrow type, and we want to make that, let's make that 0 or 1 instead of 1 or 1. 1 and only 1. Now we've got 0 or 1. Okay. The final thing I want to show you is how to create a foreign key. Let's say we want one more attribute over here on our entity 1, and it's going to be E1. Oops. E1 OGTR4. Okay. Now we're going to want to make that our foreign key. We can set a foreign key exactly like we set a primary key. You select the attribute, right click, and choose set foreign key. And notice it's indented, so it will never overwrite your primary key indicator. Thank you for your attention. This concludes our video lecture.